The sponsor, 3P Sports.
The very top of the game, Vern Gambetta, Mackie Shilstone. You know, all these people have been involved with the development of this program. Kevin Wilk, who is Dr. Andrews' #1 physical therapist, you know, his research and development on rehabbing injured pitchers and then understanding how to proactively, through prehab, train pitchers to stay healthy, optimize their performance, and maximize their velocity. This program is based on, #1, all your pitching drills, how you prepare pitching-wise, mastering your delivery, and getting your game plan game ready for your start. Also from the conditioning program. And the conditioning program has been developed by studying the biomechanical analysis and understanding what are the measurements in the pitching delivery and how can we train them at the highest level. One thing that we've learned, for example, in the pitching delivery is that how fast the hips rotate and how fast the upper torso rotates is directly linked to fastball velocity. Our conditioning program, many components are based on developing that kind of power. So components of the conditioning program are strength training, our tubing and range of motion, you know, for a rotator cuff and our elbow program, aerobic conditioning, endurance conditioning, you know, through our running program, medicine ball, core training, understanding how to functionally train the core to rotate faster. And these are the routines of some of the great pitchers, again, Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers. One of the overriding concepts of our topic today is that, #1, we need to learn from yesterday, learn from our successes and our mistakes and failures. #2, focus on today. What is our routine today so that we can optimize performance? And #3, prepare for tomorrow. One of the overriding concepts of 3P Sports, which is the pitching program that's been at the major league level for over 15 years, now available at the amateur level, is understanding that preparation equals performance. Because the big question that people always ask, and if you attended our last webinar regarding the fact that what comes first, confidence or success? What comes first is preparation, because if we are totally prepared, that is going to give us the self-confidence to go out and optimize our performance. This program is all about developing power. Power equals speed plus strength. So I'm going to give you one example before we get into the days leading up to your start. We've understood through all these studies that the vertical jump and the standing broad jump is directly linked to fastball velocity. The vertical jump at the high-end level, at the major league level, that will lend itself to predictability of high-end velocity is just over 95 inches. The standing broad jump is just over 27.5 inches. So as you get into high school and you start getting into that 83, 84, 85 mile an hour range, your vertical jump, if you're over 90 inches and you're at that 95-inch range of your vertical jump, or your standing broad jump, I'm sorry, and your vertical jump is over 27 inches, at 27 inches, the predictability of velocity is there without question. So this program is about developing that type of power. So let's get into day one. So for example, we started yesterday and we're coming into day one. The three components of our preparation coming into our start is #1, our pitching, our conditioning, and our mental and emotional skills. So from our pitching standpoint, day one, we shadow box our delivery. We have certain drills that we do that we've tested at the lab to make sure that from Dr. Andrews and Dr. Fleisig's research that this does train the delivery to maximize and master your delivery so that you can optimize performance and get to your high-end velocity. So when we talk about shadow boxing these drills, #1, we shadow box our crow hop drills, which is our long toss footwork, our stride drills, our square up drill, our balance drills for our wind up and stretch. And we'll shadow box them with our eyes open and our eyes closed. And we call those blind ups. So when we do this with our eyes closed, we're really putting this imprint of the delivery on our mind, which allows us to truly master our pitching delivery. We have a daily throwing program, which constitutes on day one with a light long toss. When I say light long toss, we're talking about somewhere about 70% of our normal distance. Proper crow hop with proper mechanics keeping our hip levels and shoulder levels even to the ground so we don't get a big tilt, a light arc, a small arc when we long toss. So for example, if you put the foul pole at your field, typically in the middle of you and your throwing partner, this ball would go over that foul pole. So somewhere about a 15 to 20 degree arc, just a slight arc, not on the line. And we long toss at somewhere about 70%. Nice and easy, just a nice easy stretch, somewhere about 120 feet, maybe 150 feet at the higher end level, maybe 180. At the lower level, maybe 90 to 100 feet to 110, 120 feet. And then we come back, and then we'll get the catcher down, and we'll do some light drills. Very, very low intensity, very low intensity, and very low volumes. Now, as far as our conditioning program, day one is legs and back. And I can never emphasize this more. It's legs, 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 and the back, back, back. Having understanding that your scap, how you load your scap, and how you unload your scap is definitely related to fastball velocity. And then our core. We do a lot of medicine ball twists and throws. On day one, our med ball work is more twist. Now again, some of this is individual, and it can be tweaked individually, but we typically suggest that on day one, we like to do med ball twist and throws. Now when we talk about core development and core training, what we're talking about is from the bottom of the rib cage. So if you can touch the bottom of your rib cage and touch the top of your kneecap, between that area, between the bottom of your rib cage to the top of your kneecap, that is developing your core power. How you can generate core power by rotation and strengthening that core to maximize hip rotation velocities and upper torso rotational velocities. As far as our running that day, that's what we call typically a flush. It's a 20-minute minimum. That could be a jog run. It could be a bike. It could be a elliptical. It could be a Stairmaster. And also it can get up as high as 40. We have guys that go to 40, 45, 50 minutes, depending on what your volume is and what your intensity is. And then from the mental standpoint, we review yesterday's game. If you have film of your yesterday's game, that would be awesome. Review the film, look at your delivery, your demeanor on the mound, how you attacked hitters, did you maximize your strength? If you have some data, first pitch strikes, 1-1 strikes, so on down the line, to really understand, did you actually maximize your strengths in that particular game? What can we learn, again, from yesterday? What can we focus on today? And what can we prepare for tomorrow? Day two. Day two is our bullpen day from a pitching standpoint, one of the most important days of our routine. So typically we'll start off again with shadow boxing our drills, eyes open, eyes closed. Then we get into our long toss program. Now this is 90% of our maximum distance. So when you're talking about guys that throw from 84 to 90 plus miles an hour, your distance should be somewhere around 220, 250, 280, somewhere maybe even close to 300 feet at a 90% effort, proper crow hop, proper mechanics in our throwing long distance, and with a nice 15 to 20 degree arc. After we do our long toss, we now come in with the catcher down. We take it on flat ground. We take a handful of crow hop throws, and then we do a couple drills, and then we go to the mound. Now, once we get to the mound, we have typically between a 25 pitch to about a 45 pitch rehearsal, and we call it a rehearsal, so that we really practice on our get-ahead pitches, our fastballs to both sides of the plate, our off-speed pitches, our breaking ball or changeup to both sides of the plate or at the very bottom of the strike zone, and then also our put-aways. How do we put a hitter away once we get to an 0-2-1-2 count? So, for example, early in the season, Roy Halladay had over 45% of his total batters faced at the 0-2-1-2 count, and from that point on, the batting average was .080. He practices his put-aways, and he talked about how he does this in the bullpen in his pregame routine, so that when he goes out there, he knows exactly how he wants to put away a righty and a lefty, maximizing his strengths. If you're in a league, at the 60-foot league, where the runners take a lead and they can steal bases, we practice what most people call slide steps. We call them quick pitches. And we call them quick pitches because we want to make a pitch as quickly as possible, not just slide step and get the pitch to home plate and do this with mechanical flaws. We also make sure that when we're in a stretch, we check the runner at first. We have times that we check the runner at second base. So we come set, check the runner at second, have our eyes look back at second base, and then pick up the catcher and make a pitch. So that all these things that happen in the game, we've rehearsed them. We also like to do our pitch outs in the bullpen, one to a right-hand hitter and one to a lefty. So if we have to do a pitch out in the game, we're prepared to do that. And then we also do an intentional walk. A righty will intentionally walk a lefty, and a lefty will intentionally walk a righty. Now we get to our conditioning program for day 2. Day 2 is upper body. Upper body is what day 2 is about from as far as our strength training is concerned. Upper body consists of push-ups, incline push-ups, for example, incline pull-ups, dumbbell bench press, rhomboids. Upper body is making sure that we do some strength training for our upper body. And then we have our core work. Typically, because that was our throwing day, our bullpen day, we mainly do more twist, med ball twist, and ab work and core work on day 2. And all this information and all these programs are on our website at 3P Sports. Our running program is more long sprints. This is speed work now. First, day 1 was endurance. Day 2 is speed. We do long sprints. Typically, like an example of a long sprint day would be, for example, doing what we call like 3/4, meaning that you would start, say, at the right field foul pole, and you'd run along the warning track, along the fence, and you'd run into the left center alley, and then you'd walk to the left field foul line, turn around, and then sprint back to the right center field alley, and then walk back. And we won't typically do as many as 18 or 20 of these, but at least a minimum of 10. And then we have our rotator cuff elbow program and our forearm program. That's critical on day 2. From the mental side, our mental side is really constituted by our rehearsal in the bullpen. Now we get into day 3. Day 3, from a pitching standpoint, once again, we start with our daily throwing program, which is shadow boxing our crow hop, our stride drill, our square up drill, our balance drills from the wind up and stretch before we start with our eyes open and closed. And then once we start to throw, we call this about a 70% distance, anywhere between a 65 to 75% distance. So if you're throwing 250 to 200 plus feet, now we're somewhere at 150 to 180 feet. A light long toss for about 5 minutes. We come back to flat ground, and when we get the catcher down on flat ground, we then go through drills, our stride drill, our balance drills, and then maybe we sequence 15, 20, 25 pitches, depending on how you recover. From our conditioning standpoint, day 3, once again, legs and back. Legs, 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 and making sure that our back is strong. Those are all the decelerator muscles. And then our core work, once again, they're more twists. Our core work are more twists, standing twists, laying or sitting on the ground twists with med ball with some resistance. And then we also incorporate our throws. And then from a running standpoint, that's an endurance day. So for example, this is not a 20-minute to a 40-minute run. These are more from this endurance standpoint. For an example, we'll do a 90-second run, take a minute rest. 60-second run, minute rest. 45-second run, minute rest, and we'll do 3 to 4 sets of those, depending on what level you're at. And then from after that, we'll do a 5 to 8 minute run. And when we say run, we mean somewhere about, an 8-minute mile. This is not a sprint, but it's a good, solid pace. Day 4, the day before we pitch, we want to have a light throwing day this day. Some guys don't like to throw at all. Some guys like to throw. If you choose not to throw, that's okay, but at least shadow box. If you choose not to throw, shadow box your delivery, shadow box your crow hop, your stride drill, all the drills that we mentioned on all the other days. And then if you choose to throw, now we're talking about 50% distance. We'll be at, if you're at 250 plus distance, if you're at the high end level, at 84.5 miles an hour, at that level, high school and college, now you're about 120 feet, maybe 180 feet. A lot of our guys like to go to 180 feet. Again, low intensity, low volume, and then they'll come back, and most guys like to get on flat ground again, do a handful of drills. once again, to master the delivery, and then they may sequence maybe just fastball command, maybe 10 or 15 pitches at low intensity. From a conditioning standpoint, it's optional, light upper body, very light upper body. A lot of guys like to do that. Very lightweight, medium repetitions, just to kind of, keep your body more like exercises, not really, not really strong resistance. And then and that's optional. A lot of guys don't like to do any upper body whatsoever. And then from a running standpoint, now we like to do 10 sprints. At the upper levels, between 30 and 50 yards. Now these are sprints. These are like, come on, like spike this up and get your body going. And then from the mental and emotional standpoint, one thing that we recommend through all these days, when you're doing your conditioning, Steve Carlton was really big on this. Roger Clemens was really big on this. Tommy Glavine was big on this. Pedro Martinez. I mean, these guys, Andy Pettit, I mean, I mentioned a few names right here. They really like to go through visualization techniques as they were doing their conditioning. They would think about the hitters they're going to face, the sequences they like, how they like to put away a lefty, how they like to put away a righty, crucial situations, a bunt situation. They would constantly have their mind go through all this. And then the night before, when they went to bed, they would get into a deep relaxation type of state, get themselves nice and calm, nice and peaceful, and then they would literally go through the game that they wanted to pitch. They would picture themselves warming up in the bullpen, getting in the dugout, taking the mound, and start to rehearse how they wanted the game to go during that time of that game, because they rehearsed for this. But the number one concept is preparation equals performance. It's absolutely critical that the more that we prepare, the higher the level that we prepare, and we highly recommend that you grade yourself in these areas. So you can make a list of all these activities and grade yourself, and we can get into questions and answers about that, after we open this up to our audience tonight. One last thing I want to mention, because this is a big thing that was mentioned, a big question that was asked, prior to our webinar today. Many college pitchers, and for the college pitchers out here, or maybe even some of the high school pitchers that only pitch on the weekend, that you have a 7-day routine, then your day 1 and day 2 would be, your day 1 would be the same. Day 2 would only be a long toss day. Your day 3 would be the same. And then your day 4 would be your bullpen day. And then you'd have day 5 and 6 off and then pitch in the game. So on the front end, day 1 is the same. Day 2 is long toss. Day 3 is the same. And then day 4 is your long toss bullpen day. So I applaud everyone here today. I really invite your questions, and understanding that by paying the price, by preparing at the highest level, that we totally understand that dedication, self-discipline, and sacrifice are truly our best friends to optimize our performance. So Scott, will you open it up to the questions?
Great. So first of all, for everyone in the audience, I think I may have had some feedback on my phone, and it sounds like it still may be there. So I'm going to try to read these slowly. There must be something with my dial-in number. So Rick, the first question is, what do you do ideally after you walk off the mound at the end of a game? The first thing that a pitcher should be thinking about doing.
From a physical standpoint?
I think you could take it any way you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, typically when pitchers come off the mound game day, most guys go in. What we recommend is that's the day that you'll do a medium intensity of your elbow and shoulder program. Because what we believe from rest and recovery is that if you do some elbow and shoulder program, your rotator cuff, on the day that you pitch and the day of your bullpen, that means that the days that you're not having bullpens and you're not on the mound, those become recovery days for your shoulder and elbow. Many guys, it's a big controversy. A lot of guys like to ice. It's very individual. There's a lot of controversy on it. There's a lot of debate on that. If you don't have any soreness and you truly, are someone that's not dinged up at all, we would suggest, the experts would suggest, really not to ice. If you feel like you need to ice, then go ahead and ice. And then oftentimes what guys will do is after they do their rotator cuff exercises and their elbow program, monitor with, that would be with some tubing exercises or individually how you like to do that, but the comprehensive range of motion. And then typically they would ice, if guys like to ice, and then they would get on the bike. If you have a bike available, that would be awesome. If you want to do a light jog, which typically is not practical in many applications, but if you have access to a bike, a lot of guys like to get on the bike and do a light, just a light pedal, for about 10, 15, 20 minutes while they're icing.
Okay, so I'm going to move on. Rick, there were a couple questions about icing, so I think we handled those from your perspective. What do you recommend for a reliever specifically to do between outings? Because he has to pitch numerous times over the course of a week as opposed to a starter, as you know.
Well, that's a great question. And from the reliever standpoint, we have a 7-day program for a reliever. And so that one thing that's been really clear, and again, I'm going to qualify this. I am not a conditioning expertise. I've learned from some of the best in the game. I have layman's knowledge in conditioning. We refer this to the experts. And I'll also say this, that our conditioning expert with 3P Sports is Jeff Mangold, who has 14 years with the New York Yankees, has trained the likes of Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettit, Roger Clemens, Mike Mussina. I can go on and on. He's written programs, for all of these great pitchers and was there for their World Series runs. And Jeff has put together a program, age appropriate, for 3P Sports. But for a reliever, we suggest that we do weight training 2 times per week, maybe Monday or Thursday, or maybe say Tuesday and Friday. So during the course of a week, you may do one day of legs and back, and you may do 1 day of upper body. We do 2 days of range of motion, which means your rotator cuff elbow program, and we do core work. We do core work literally 6 days a week. Two of those days are twist and throws, and 2 of those days are more twist and more ab type work. And then from a running standpoint, we have a 6-day running program that really has the mix of endurance and power type running, meaning sprint type running. But let me mention one other thing from a reliever. If you do a weight training program, say 3 to 5 hours before you pitch, and you're only going to pitch, say, 2 innings, you're fine. I mean, I can tell you. And then also, if you have the facility, you can do it after the game, which is really impractical. But I can tell you that many of our relievers over the years, and I'm talking about the best of the best, the Billy Wagners of the world, and I can go on and on, but, the best of the best, they do their workouts. They do their workouts around 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a 7 o'clock game. And again, they're not getting into the game until 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Interesting. So, Rick, you mentioned in part of your conversation about an elbow program to go along with the band workout. And one of our guests had asked if you could expand on that a little bit further.
Well, with the elbow program, you're doing, if you can picture this, the best way I could describe it is if you can picture this. If you can put a hammer in your hand or something along the lines of a hammer, and put your forearm on a table with your hand off the table, and you turn to the left and you turn it to the right, and then you take your wrist and you turn it straight down, and then you flip it straight up with the weight in the middle, and then you put your palm face up, and then you go straight down, and then you go straight up, and then you hold the hammer at the end. If you stand up and you have your thumb down the line of the hammer facing towards, say, the wall, and then you lift straight up, and then you turn it so the hammer is facing the opposite direction, and then you go backwards. So you lift it forward with the thumb straight down, and then you lift it backwards. And again, all these exercises are on 3P Sports, and examples of this are on our website, so you can understand that this program is comprehensive. As a subscriber for 3P Sports, you'll have this total comprehensive program from the conditioning to the skills and drills, and also to the mental and emotional suggestions of how to get yourself mentally and emotionally prepared to optimize your performance, along with an analysis. So not to be evasive, but this is a comprehensive program. This topic really that we tried to get in 12 to 15 minutes for the purpose of this webinar is truly could be a 5-hour discussion. I mean, we really tried to get through this, to give you an overview of what guys do and kind of a sample. But the comprehensive program is mapped out very specifically of what you do every single day and how to do those exercises. For example, on every one of these exercises that we do daily in the 3P program, as a subscriber, you would click on the program for today. They would have the whole list of exercises that you do today and the conditioning program, and then you click on that exercise or the activity, and Jeff Mangold will explain specifically how to do that exercise and how many sets and reps.
So, Rick, we have another question from one of the audience, one of the guests in the audience that asked about how do you increase the speed of pitches? They asked for specific drill suggestions, if you had any, for pitcher speed.
I'm not sure. Help me understand the question, Scott. How do you increase the speed?
So I'm gonna interpolate here because there's not a whole lot of detail. But the question was, the gentleman who asked this question asked about pitcher speed, velocity primarily more than anything else. Are there drills that we suggest that have a positive impact on a pitcher's velocity?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question. Number one, in order to increase velocity, several things have to happen. Number one, you have to have an efficient delivery. You have to make sure that there are no flaws in the delivery that would inhibit how fast your hips rotate and how fast your upper torso rotates. The only way that you can know what the answer to that question is by having an analysis. Unfortunately, that's the only way that you're going to know. The bend of the knee at foot contact, the bend of the knee at ball release, directly related to how fast the hips rotate. The position of the arm at foot contact, very critical to maximizing velocity. Your maximum external rotation, that means how far your shoulder actually rotates backwards. That's a direct link to fastball velocity. How you can expand your scap and how quickly you can contract it. So, for example, if you're doing a med ball wall throw, so for example, that would be like similar to like a chest pass in basketball. So as you bring the med ball close to your chest, your scap is expanded. As you do a chest pass towards the wall, you've now contracted it. That's why the conditioning program is directly linked to maximizing and mastering the pitching delivery by generating power, speed, plus strength. So, for example, in some of the leg programs, we do jump squats. Jump squat is the fact that you get into a squat position, and then you jump as high as you can and bring your knees to your chest. That's dynamic power. That's going to be a direct link to optimizing your vertical jump and your standing broad jump. So when you can maximize that, that's a direct link. So, for example, let me give you an example as far as a specific example at the major league level. And let me add one more other thing. Long distance throwing. And there's a lot of controversy about this, and there's a lot of people that throw a lot of tomatoes at the people who advocate long distance throwing. Long distance throwing has to be done properly. It's not just heaving a ball as far as you can throw it. It has to be done with proper footwork that loads the hips, that keeps the hip level, the shoulder levels at the proper angles, very similar to what happens on the mound. It's never going to be the same as on the mound because you're not on the mound, because you're on flat ground. And you can do all the flat ground work you want. It's not the same as on the mound. We understand that. But Dr. Axe, who has been he has been a fellow of Dr. Andrews for many, many, many years. Dr. Axe has done several years of comprehensive studies from 8-year-old pitchers to 14-year-old pitchers internationally, I say internationally, in different countries. And his quest was to find out what is the relationship to velocity and distance. The pitchers at 8 years old to 14 years old that threw the furthest distance were also the ones that had the highest velocity. Now let me give you a very specific example. Johnny Main. When we got Johnny Main from Baltimore, Johnny Main was 89 to 91, maybe touched to 92, is what our scouting reports had. The average standing long jump, standing broad jump, is just over 95 inches. Johnny Main jumped over 107 inches. 107 inches. That's almost 12 inches further. The standing vertical jump is somewhere just over 27, right about 27 and a half inches. Johnny Main jumped 31 and a half inches. When I saw those measurements and I looked at Johnny Main's delivery, which had many flaws in it, and his conditioning program was not trained like we're talking about, developing explosive power, I knew for a fact that if Johnny Main cleaned up his delivery and conditioned in a fashion to generate power, speed, and strength, that Johnny Main had a big gap of velocity that he can increase. Now you're talking about a guy who's pitched 5 years, about 5 or 6 years professionally, a couple years at the AAA level, cup of coffee in the big leagues with Baltimore, and when he finally got to the point where he maximized this, Johnny Main at that point was averaging 94 to 96 miles an hour in a game. And if you want to put one number on it, he probably pitched at 93 to 95. You know, not one number, but a range, you know, of his pitchability, as people would say, and topping out at 95 and 96. And that's a big league pitcher. Yovani Gallardo with Milwaukee last year, same thing. You know, as far as his conditioning, he got a much better condition. We cleaned up his delivery by doing a biomechanical analysis and looking at his measurements. We adjusted his delivery. So if you're interested, get online and look at Yovani Gallardo's delivery in 2009 and look at it at 2010, and you'll see the difference. Look at where he is on the rubber. Look at what he does with his hands. Look at the hip load, and also with John Axford. And Yovani Gallardo had an average velocity increase 2 miles an hour last year in August and September. Axford was averaging somewhere about 95, 96, 97 miles an hour last year. Take a look at his delivery in September 2009 and compare it to 2010 and this year, and Axford's one of the premier closers in the game today. This is really, what do I say, a reflection of this program. It's not about a pitching coach, it's about a program.
Hey, Rick, I've switched phones. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Still think there's a gremlin here, but we've got another question about weighted balls or lighter balls as part of the warm-up routine, the pen, build on strength.
Well, here's the issue. The research really indicates that weighted balls for a mature pitcher, when I say a mature pitcher, someone who has had no injury, arm injury or body injuries, and no dings, who's done a conditioning program for a minimum of a year, who's pitched at a relatively intense level for a minimum of a year, somewhere probably in that 14 would be a very young age at the bottom. 15, 16, 17 would be more ideal, and we would suggest that weighted balls are used more primarily as an off-season program to increase velocity. It's not an in-season program. We really suggest off-season. At this point, we have not put this on our 3P program. It's something that we're considering adding because it has to be really highly monitored. It has to be someone, the risk of injury using heavy balls improperly is off the charts, putting you at a major risk. Done properly, supervised, high level, with a coach, with an experienced coach or someone who's experienced monitoring this, we've seen that the rewards are immense. Cleaning up arm action and also increasing velocity. So it's something really high on our recommendation, and it's something that we're really considering adding to our program in the future, but we would not recommend it as a as an in-season program.
Rick, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about meals, food intake, things like that. We got a question about protein supplements, whey supplements. Any suggestions around diet?
Well, again, I'm not a nutritional expert. I'm a pitching expert. The answer is yes. I mean, to really do something intelligent along those lines, making sure that you understand what the requirements are for grams of protein per body weight. Typically, if you're training at a high level, typically people would say that you could go as high as 90% of your body weight. So, for example, if you weigh 200 pounds, you're talking about 180 grams of protein. Again, I'm not an expert along those lines. Again, it's another part of our program we've talked about expanding, but there's a ton of information over the web along those lines. But to truly, from rest and recovery standpoint, making sure that nutritionally that you truly take care of yourself. Obviously, fried foods are not very good before a game. Animal protein, fish and chicken obviously is better. Low-fat dairy products are obviously better. There's some controversy over soy and whey protein along those lines, but making sure that that you follow strict hydration parameters as well as protein parameters, making sure that you get enough protein and making sure that you don't get too much protein for that matter, but also making sure in game, pre-workouts, post-workouts, all that is absolutely critical to optimize your performance. And I can tell you at the major league level, I mean, these guys for the most part are totally committed. They have a pre-workout type of nutrition regime. They have a post-workout nutrition regime. They pay attention to the diet. They pay attention to hydration, and they pay attention to even in-game, especially for a starter, to make sure that maybe you have a banana in the dugout and you take a bite of a banana, after every couple innings, or some type of really high level complex carbohydrate to make sure that your blood sugar stays at the level that it needs to stay.
Great. So once again, guys, folks on the phone, I sense my phone is just bugging all kinds of grief, so this is going to be the last question tonight. Rick, a great question here about the towel drill, one of our favorite topics. So why don't you give us your feedback on the towel drill and whether that's part of the quote shadow program that you recommend?
Well, let me say this: the towel drill, we took a look at the towel drill in Dr. Andrews' lab, and Dr. Fleisig did a study of the towel drill in the lab. So we had a pitcher did a biomechanical analysis, and a pitcher who really loved the towel drill, and then he did the towel drill the way it typically is taught. And the way the towel drill is typically taught is the coach would sit out in front of the pitcher with his hand out front, and the instruction would be reach out as far as you possibly can reach so that the towel can hit that hand, and it's all about release point extension. Well, the pitcher who did the towel drill based on that instruction, this was the first year I was with the Mets, and I was not a big component of the towel drill. I should say that. I didn't really know enough about the towel drill, and we hadn't studied it. So when he did the towel drill, his hip rotation velocities were somewhere close to 600 degrees per second in about the mid-550s, which is right above the normative range. He topped out at 97 miles an hour, pitched at 95 miles an hour. And then we put the towel in his hand. He did the towel drill, and we said the instruction was to do it at high intensity, and his hip rotation velocities dropped about 150 degrees per second, which means that he was decreasing how fast his hips rotate. So if you're going to do the towel drill, we highly suggest that it's instructed, and I'm not a big proponent of the towel drill, but if you're going to do it, we would highly suggest that you make sure that you focus on the back foot rotation, and the rotation of your back foot is going to be identical to how it rotates during the course of a pitch. We did test shadow boxing, meaning nothing in the pitcher's hand, and the pitcher actually did, went through a pitch at high intensity. Shadow boxing with no ball in their hand at high intensity came up that the normative ranges of the pitching delivery were all intact. So it turned out to be a very productive activity, and that's why we're advocates of this. And as years go by, and as time goes by, I mean, if you go back 5 years ago where this program was at the major league level, we've evolved. We've learned things, and we're going to continually learn things, and we're going to consistently tweak it and adjust it because we have the resources, as I said earlier on at the beginning of this presentation, we have the resources of the top conditioning coaches, of the top, doctors, Dr. Fleisig, Dr. Andrews. We have the access of all these people's input, and we'll consistently improve this program as time goes by.
Great. So, Rick, let me wrap this up. Normally, I would try to explain and articulate the special offer that we provide for every one of these events, and it's on the screen right now. Because I know the echo is really bad, the normal price in this program for 3P Sports is $399. We offer a 7-day promotion for anybody who wants this program who's on this webinar. $100 off. It'll expire in 7 days. We'll follow up with an email afterwards. Folks, by the next time we meet, we'll have this problem repaired. Rick, thank you very much.
Yeah, and let me just add to all the people that are attending right now, I think it's the case that Scott got a new Dixie cup today, and we got the string too tight. We've been pulling the string a little bit too tight, and now always cause a problem. So we apologize for the technical difficulties, but we appreciate your participation and always your feedback, because it's all about what can we do to help you make a difference and optimize your potential.
Thanks all. Good night.